All right, strap in everybody because we're going deep into the heart of Singapore's education system today.
Yep.
And we've got this really interesting article from Channel News Asia
Mm-hmm.
all about some changes they're making. And I know a lot of you out there are super curious about how this is going to shake things up,
Right.
especially when it comes to getting into those really prestigious junior colleges, the JCs.
Oh, absolutely. Those JCs. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Big deal over there.
huge deal. And
Yeah.
Singapore, they don't mess around when it comes to education.
No.
They take it very seriously. So even like a small tweak to the system can
Uh-huh.
have like a ripple effect
Oh, yeah.
across like the student's whole journey,
For sure.
And this latest move, this is a big one.
Yeah.
So starting in 2028,
Okay.
they're switching from the L1R5 scoring system to L1R4 for JC admissions.
Okay.
And I know a lot of you are already familiar with what those mean.
Yep.
But let's break it down. Like, what does this actually mean for students,
On the ground, right? Like
Yeah.
actually like trying to get in.
So under the old L1R5, you had to have, good scores in 6 subjects.
Right. Right.
To get into JC.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, imagine the pressure
Yeah.
of like juggling languages, humanities, math, sciences.
It's a lot.
It's like an academic decathlon.
It is. Yeah.
And then L1R4 comes along,
Right.
drops it down to 5.
Takes one off your plate.
One less subject to stress about. But I'm
Yeah.
wondering, does this actually make it easier to get into JC?
Well, that's where it gets interesting
Okay.
because the Ministry of Education over there, what they said was that the cutoff points will adjust accordingly.
Okay.
So, they're not saying it's easier.
Right.
They're just saying the game's changing a little bit, right?
Gotcha.
But think about it, though. I mean,
Yeah.
for a student who's maybe just struggling with that one subject or really wants to dedicate more time to something else,
Yeah.
it could be huge for them.
It's like they're getting
Breathing room.
breathing room
Mm-hmm.
to like explore, I don't know, other interests or maybe pursue something totally outside of academics even, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you think this could maybe lead to more people applying to polytechnics?
Oh, possibly.
I know.
You're interested in that.
I'm fascinated by that.
That's a good question.
Because polytechnics are already,
Really popular.
yeah, pretty popular, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you suddenly have like this, option to kind of like lighten your academic load a bit and
Yeah.
maybe focus on something
More hands-on.
more vocational, exactly. It
Oh.
might tip the scales for some students.
Yeah. I mean, if you have a better idea of what you want to do career-wise,
Yeah.
then the polytechnic route
Yeah.
starts to look even better.
Yeah. It's almost like Singapore is kind of subtly,
Nudging people.
nudging students towards like a broader definition of success.
Yeah.
Not just like, top schools.
Chasing those grades.
Yeah, exactly. But why the shift? Right.
Yeah, good question.
Like, was L1R5, was it not working?
Well, I mean, they've always aimed for like a really solid foundation for the A-levels,
Right.
which is like their college entrance exams.
Yeah.
And the old system, it was meant to make sure students had like a broad base of knowledge.
A breadth of knowledge.
But their A-level passing rates, they're already super high.
Oh, wow.
So it seems like the students are pretty well prepared, even with 6 subjects.
Okay.
Plus, and this is crazy, more and more students are actually taking 8
8.
or even more O-level subject.
Oh.
Like they're just,
How is that even possible?
I know, it's wild. It seems like the system might have been pushing them a little too hard.
So 8 O-level subjects. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
It is.
I mean, it sounds like they were almost competing to see who could handle
Yeah, the pressure,
the most pressure.
the most academic pressure.
So this move to L1R4, is it like, are they recognizing that maybe that hyper-competitive environment isn't?
I
It's
think
just
so. I
exciting.
think there's definitely this growing focus on like well-rounded individuals, not just
Right.
people who are good at taking tests.
Yeah, exam-taking machines.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And this shift, it seems to reflect that, like giving
Yeah.
students more space to actually
Totally.
explore what they're passionate
There's some
about,
other skills.
develop other skills. Yeah,
Alongside the academics.
exactly.
That's really fascinating. It's like a whole,
It's like a philosophy.
yeah, it's a philosophy shift, right?
Mhm.
In response to, what society needs.
Exactly
Yeah.
what the world needs.
So this isn't just about like changing the scoring system. This is about, a potential like cultural shift.
Big picture,
Yeah, within Singapore's education system.
for sure.
But before we get too carried away with the big picture stuff,
Okay.
there is one little exception to this whole L1R4 change.
Right.
What's the deal with Millennia Institute?
Ah, yes, Millennia Institute,
Yeah.
MI. They're doing their own thing.
Okay.
They're keeping their L1R4 system,
Yep.
but they've
Yeah.
got a 20-point threshold,
Okay.
and they require students to have like a mix of humanities and science or math subjects.
So it's a little more. So it's a little more specialized.
Specialized, yeah,
Mhm.
than the standard JC track.
Right. Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they're keeping that focus on breadth,
Mm-hmm.
but with a slightly higher, bar to get in.
Yeah, for sure.
Seems like there are still multiple pathways for those students who really thrive
Yeah.
in a really academically rigorous environment.
Exactly. They have options.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But how does this all tie back into, Singapore's focus on well-roundedness?
Right.
Is it just about having more time for, like, extracurriculars?
Well, it's part of it.
I mean, imagine a student who's super passionate about, I don't know, robotics.
Yeah.
In the past, they might have had to give that up
Yeah.
to focus on those 6 core subjects.
To get the grades. Yeah.
Right. But now with L1R4,
Yeah.
maybe they have the time and the energy to do both.
Right. Right.
Pursue their academic goals and their
Yeah.
passion.
It opens up like a world of possibilities.
It does.
But I'm also I'm wondering about the flip side of that.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, what about the students who maybe don't have access to the same opportunities?
Right, with the resources.
Yeah, maybe because of financial constraints or something.
That's a really good point.
Right. So will this like inadvertently create new pressures?
Yeah, that's the question, right? Like,
Yeah.
will well-roundedness become like the new
Like the new
metric for competition?
Yeah.
And what happens to the kids
And then you're disadvantaging.
who maybe don't have as much?
Right. It's a complex, right?
It is.
It's not as straightforward as it seems.
No, not at all.
So we've got this really interesting tension
Yeah.
between, encouraging a broader definition of success,
Mhm.
but also potentially creating new pressures.
Right. New ways to compete.
This is where it gets good, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. This is
The part that, like, I'm picturing, like, gleaming new buildings
Right.
and, like, cutting-edge labs.
you're not far off.
Am I close?
You're getting warmer.
Okay, okay.
It's this big initiative, multi-million-dollar initiative
Wow.
to basically revamp JC campuses.
So they're, like, actually physically changing.
Yeah, they're like rebuilding them
Oh, wow.
to make them more, in line with this well-rounded education idea.
So it's not just like...
Not just like adding a ping pong table and calling it a day.
Yeah, okay.
This is a serious makeover.
So what kind of upgrades are we talking about here?
Think like configurable spaces,
Okay.
collaborative work zones, facilities designed to like spark creativity,
Yeah.
innovation. They're really reimagining
The whole thing.
the physical learning environment
Yeah.
to match their goals, for the students.
It's like they're building the schools of the future.
Kind of, yeah.
So which schools are getting this like futuristic makeover?
Well, the first phase, which is already happening,
Hmm.
includes 4 schools.
Okay.
Anderson Serangoon, JC,
Okay.
Jurong Pioneer JC,
Mm-hmm.
Temasek JC, and Yishun Nineveh JC.
Gotcha.
And the estimated cost for this first phase alone is like 570 million Singapore dollars.
That's a serious like investment.
Yeah, it's not messing around. They're
No.
serious about this.
They're serious about it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it shows you how committed they are to making this happen.
Okay, so that's phase 1. What about phase 2?
Phase 2 adds 4 more schools.
Okay.
Anglo-Chinese JC, Catholic JC,
Mhm.
National JC, and Victoria JC.
So 8 schools total getting this.
8 schools, yeah.
Wow. And they're talking about maybe even moving some of them.
Yeah, to brand new campuses.
So like whole new campuses.
Whole food campuses.
That's wild. That's commitment.
It is.
But here's what I'm curious about.
Okay.
How do these like fancy new buildings actually translate into a more well-rounded education?
Right. Good question.
Like, is it just about having nicer places to study?
No, it's more than that.
Yep.
It's about creating spaces that actually encourage, active learning, collaboration,
I see.
interdisciplinary exploration.
So it's about moving away from that like traditional model of
Yeah.
students just like,
Sitting in a lecture hall.
yeah, just passively absorbing information.
Right. They want to make it more dynamic, more interactive.
So they want them to be like doing things.
Yeah, exactly. More hands-on.
Yeah. Okay.
So these new spaces, they're designed to like make it easier to do group projects.
Gotcha.
Hands-on learning, student-led initiatives. It's all about giving students the space to like
Yeah.
experiment, take risks.
I like that.
Yeah, develop their skills in a more holistic way.
So it's about breaking down the walls between the subjects.
Exactly.
And having them make connections.
Connecting the dots.
Between different disciplines.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does this all tie back to, that L1R4 shift we were talking about?
Right, right.
Is there a connection there?
Oh, absolutely. Remember how we were talking about students having more time?
Yeah, more flexibility.
More flexibility with L1R4.
Yeah.
Well, these upgraded facilities,
Yes.
they give them the perfect environment to actually use that freedom,
Okay, so I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
It's not just about changing a scoring system.
It's bigger than that.
It's about creating this whole ecosystem that supports a more well-rounded approach.
Exactly, exactly.
So the L1R4 change frees up time and mental space. And then these new buildings, they provide like the physical space and the tools for students to actually use that time
to blossom.
To blossom. I like that. This is a good word.
Yeah.
It's like a multi-pronged approach, right? To change the education system.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see how these different pieces are all working together.
Yeah, and they're laying the groundwork for this whole new generation.
Right, new generation.
There's Singaporean students who are not just academically strong, which, they already are, but they're also creative.
Adaptable.
Adaptable, yeah. Engaged citizens of the world.
Yeah, the whole package.
Yeah. But here's the thing, how do you actually measure well-roundedness?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do you put a number on something like that?
Right, right.
It's so multifaceted.
Yes.
Singapore is trying different things.
Okay.
But it's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah, because you don't want to encourage,
right.
Exploration and all this other stuff.
You don't want to create a new set of pressures.
And then just create a new set of pressures, right?
No, exactly.
So it's a balance, right?
It's a balancing act, definitely.
Yeah, you almost have to, redefine what it means to be successful in this new system, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just about the grades anymore.
It's not just about the grades anymore.
It's the whole person.
It's about, the whole person. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a cultural shift as much as it is an educational one. And I'm really curious to see how this plays out long term.
Yeah, long term. How does this actually affect the students down the road?
Will this emphasis on well-roundedness actually lead to a better experience for students?
Right.
Or will it just create, new forms of pressure and competition?
Right, new anxieties, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a question only time will tell. Right?
Only time will tell, yeah. But one thing's for sure.
What's that?
Singapore is, taking a big swing here.
They are.
They're trying something new.
Yeah.
They're really reimagining what education could be.
Yeah.
And the whole world's watching.
The whole world is watching.
Yeah. To see, what happens.
What we can learn, yeah.
Exactly. What works, what doesn't work.
Yeah, it's
It's a case study?
Yeah, a case study.
In educational innovation, right?
Yeah.
It's really cool.
And it brings up these, bigger questions about, what is the purpose of education in the 21st century?
In this crazy world.
This crazy world, exactly.
Yeah.
What should it look like?
Yeah, what should it be?
What should it be?
Big questions.
I think we've covered a lot of ground.
We have?
From the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, all the details.
Details of L1R4 to the philosophical.
The big ideas.
Yeah, the big ideas of what Singapore is trying to do.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating deep dive, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they're constantly evolving and challenging the status quo.
Never a dull moment over there.
Never a dull moment, exactly. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break.
Go.
But when we come back, we are diving into
the
JC Rejuvenation Programme.
That's the fun part.
This is where it gets really exciting.
Yeah, get ready.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, so we talked about, this move to L1R4 and how it could really impact students' choices.
Right.
And maybe even change what it means to be successful.
Big changes.
Yeah, in Singapore's education system.
Yeah.
But let's zoom in on this JC Rejuvenation Program a little bit.
Okay, yeah, let's get into the details.
You mentioned it before the break, and I'm getting the sense that this is a
big deal.
This is a big deal.
Yeah.
So paint us a picture. What is this all about?
Well, it's this huge multi-million-dollar initiative to basically revamp JC campuses.
Okay. So
physically change the schools.
not just sprucing things up a bit?
No. This is way more than just a fresh coat of paint.
Okay, so what are they actually doing?
They're creating spaces that are, designed to support this whole well-rounded education idea that we've been talking about.
So what kind of spaces?
I mean, think flexible learning areas. Spaces that can be reconfigured for different activities,
Gotcha.
collaborative work zones, like, think like Google's offices
Whoa, okay,
with all
I
those
get it.
cool, like, breakout areas and stuff.
Yeah, I get it.
And then, they're also building facilities that are specifically designed to
Okay.
encourage creativity and innovation.
So it's like
Maker spaces, recording studios, things like that.
they're building the schools of the future.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the idea, right?
That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
So which schools are getting this like futuristic makeover?
Well, the first phase, which, like I said, is already happening,
Mm-hmm.
includes 4 schools.
Okay.
Anderson Serangoon JC, Jurong Pioneer JC,
Okay.
Temasek JC, and Yishan Innova JC.
Okay. So they're starting with 4.
Yeah, and get this, the estimated cost just for this first phase
Okay.
is a whopping 570 million Singapore dollars.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, yeah.
Wow. It's like they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly, they're serious about this.
Okay. So what about phase 2?
Phase 2 adds 4 more schools.
Okay. Who are they?
Anglo-Chinese JC, Catholic JC,
Mm-hmm.
National JC, and Victoria JC.
So 8 schools total are going to get.
8 schools total will be part of this program.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's even talk of, like, relocating some of these schools to, like, brand new campuses.
Like built from the ground up.
Brand new, yeah.
Wow. That's next level.
A pretty big deal, yeah.
Okay. So we've got these fancy new buildings.
Right.
But I'm still kind of stuck on like,
Okay.
how does this actually translate into a more well-rounded education?
Right. Good question.
Like, is it just about having, nicer spaces to study?
No, it's not just about aesthetics. It's
Okay.
about creating spaces that actually encourage, different ways of learning.
Okay.
Like more active learning, more collaboration.
So it's not just sitting in a lecture hall.
No, more passively absorbing information.
Okay.
They want students to be actively involved.
Okay.
So these new spaces, they're designed to make it easier to do things like group projects,
I see.
hands-on learning, student-led initiatives.
Okay.
They want to give students the freedom to experiment,
Okay.
to take risks, to learn by doing.
So it's really about like,
It's about a shift in the whole learning experience.
yeah, okay.
It's not just about the content. It's about how they learn.
So how does this all tie back to the L1R4 shift?
Right. Yeah, good point.
Like, is there a connection there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Remember how we were talking about, students having more time,
Mm-hmm.
more flexibility
That's right.
through the L1R4 system?
Yeah.
Well, these upgraded facilities, they give them the space
Yeah.
to actually use that time effectively.
Okay. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. It's
Yeah.
not just about, tweaking the scoring system.
It's about creating a whole new environment.
Yeah, like a whole ecosystem that supports this
yeah.
well-rounded approach.
Yeah, they're thinking about it holistically.
So L1R4 frees up time. Mm-hmm.
And then these new buildings, they provide the physical space and the tools
The tools, so yeah.
for students to actually do something with that time.
To explore, to create, to grow.
Yeah, it's like a multi-pronged approach to educational reform.
It is, yeah. And it's fascinating to see how these different elements are all working together.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to create a whole new generation.
Mm-hmm. A new generation of...
And Singaporean students who are not just academically strong.
Right, which we know they already are.
But also, creative, adaptable, engaged.
The whole package.
Yeah.
Right.
But here's a question that's been bugging me.
Okay.
How do you actually measure well-roundedness?
Right. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
how do you actually quantify something that's so, multifaceted?
Yeah.
It's tough. Singapore's experimenting with different approaches,
Okay.
but it's definitely still a work in progress.
Yeah, because you don't want to...
You don't want to create new pressures, accidentally create a whole new set of pressures.
Right, exactly. You don't want to replace one problem with another.
Right.
Yeah.
A balance.
It's a delicate balance, for sure.
Yeah, and you almost have to redefine what success means.
What it means to be successful in
Exactly.
this new system.
Yeah, it's a cultural shift.
It's not just about, changing the curriculum
It's about changing mindsets.
or building new buildings.
It's about how we think about education as a whole.
It's a big challenge.
It is a huge challenge, but it's exciting,
Yeah, it is exciting.
Like, they're really pushing the boundaries.
And I think it's, a question for all of us, right?
Yeah, it's not just a Singapore thing.
Not just a Singapore.
This is something that every country is grappling with.
what should education look like in the 21st century?
Right. How do we prepare kids for a future that's constantly changing?
Yeah, and Singapore, they're kind of leading the way.
They are. They're trying new things, experimenting. And the whole world's watching.
The whole world's watching to see what happens.
It's like a giant experiment.
It is, and it's fascinating to watch.
It's exciting.
It's exciting, yeah.
So we've talked about L1R4.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about this JC Rejuvenation Program, and we've talked about like this big question of what is well-roundedness and how do you measure it?
Yeah, the big picture stuff.
So now I want to talk about something that's been on my mind.
Okay.
Like, how do we actually teach these skills?
Right. The skills that make up well-roundedness.
Yeah. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, we want students to be creative and adaptable and all that, but how do you actually teach that?
It's a good question, and it's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
It's a good question, and it's not an easy answer.
Right.
It's not like there's a textbook for, creative problem solving.
Right. Exactly. So how do we get there?
Well, I think it requires a pretty big shift in how we think about teaching.
Okay.
Like moving away from rote learning, memorizing facts and formulas.
Yeah, the stuff that, we grew up with.
Right, exactly. And instead, focusing more on like experiential learning, project-based learning, stuff that gets kids actually applying their knowledge.
So more hands-on stuff.
Exactly. More hands-on, more real-world applications.
So like what? Give me some examples.
Sure. I mean, think like simulations,
Okay.
debates,
Mm-hmm.
hands-on activities, things that really force them to think critically
Thanks, Ed.
and solve problems.
So it's about creating a learning experience that's more like active and engaging.
Exactly. They're not just passively absorbing information.
They're actually doing things.
They're doing things, they're asking questions,
Yeah.
they're making mistakes.
Okay, so mistakes are okay.
Mistakes are more than okay, they're essential.
Okay, how so?
Well, that's how we learn, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
It's about fostering a growth mindset.
Okay, I've heard that term before. What does that actually mean?
Basically, it means viewing challenges and setbacks as opportunities for growth rather than, failures.
So it's like you're not afraid to make mistakes.
Right, you embrace them.
Because you learn from them.
Exactly, it's all part of the process.
So how do you create that kind of environment in a classroom?
Well, it starts with the teacher, right?
Okay.
They need to create a safe space.
Where kids feel comfortable.
Where kids feel comfortable taking risks.
Yeah.
Trying new things without being afraid of failing.
That makes sense.
And it's not just about the classroom environment.
Okay.
It's about the whole school culture.
Right. Like a culture that values learning.
Exactly, and values effort.
More than just grades.
More than just grades, yeah.
So this sounds like a really different kind of school than, the ones most of us grew up in.
It is. It's a different way of thinking about education.
But how do you actually implement this on a large scale?
Right. That's the challenge.
Yeah, we're talking about millions of students.
The millions of students, all with different needs.
Different learning styles.
Different backgrounds. Yeah, it's a huge undertaking.
So where do you even begin?
Well, I think technology can play a big role here.
Okay, how so?
I mean, think about personalized learning platforms.
Okay.
They can tailor the content and the pace of learning to each individual student.
So it's like customized education.
Exactly. It's like having a personal tutor for every student.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
It is, and it's becoming more and more accessible.
So technology is not about replacing teachers.
No, not at all.
It's about giving them more tools.
Exactly. It's about empowering teachers
to create a more personalized experience.
to create a more effective learning experience for every student.
That's really cool.
It is cool. It's like we're on the verge of an educational revolution.
Yeah, feels like it.
Like we're finally starting to move away from this one-size-fits-all model of education.
Yeah, that never really worked for everyone.
No, it didn't. And it's exciting to see these new approaches emerging.
And Singapore is really leading the way.
They are. They're not afraid to try new things.
Do you think other countries will follow their lead?
I think they have to. I mean,
Yeah.
the world is changing so fast.
Right.
We need to prepare our kids for a future that we can't even imagine.
Yeah. And that means rethinking education.
Exactly. It's not just about knowledge anymore.
It's about skills. It's about adaptability.
It's about creativity, critical thinking,
problem solving.
collaboration, communication, all these things.
Yeah, it's like a whole new set of tools for navigating the world.
Exactly. And Singapore is showing us that it's possible.
Yeah, it's inspiring. It really is.
It is. It gives me hope for the future of education.
Me too.
It's like we're finally starting to understand what kids really need to succeed.
Not just in school, but in life.
In life. Exactly.
So we've talked about this shift to L1R4.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about the JC Rejuvenation Program.
Right.
And we've talked about this big idea of well-roundedness.
And how to actually teach it.
Yeah, and how to actually teach it, which is a huge challenge.
Yeah, it is a huge challenge.
But it's an exciting challenge.
It is. It's exciting to be part of this conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about shaping the future of education.
We are, and it's a collective effort.
It's not just up to Singapore.
No, it's up to all of us.
Parents, teachers, policymakers.
We all have a role to play.
We all need to be part of this conversation.
Exactly. Because the future of education is the future of our kids.
And the future of the world.
And the future of the world. Yeah.
So on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this deep dive into Singapore's education revolution.
It's been a great conversation.
It has. It's been really fascinating.
I've enjoyed it.
Me too. And thank you to everyone out there for listening.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
And for being part of this conversation.
Keep those minds curious.
And remember, the future is what we make it.
So let's make it a good one.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for today.
See you next time.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.